This is the first in a series of a few videos in which I want to look at some of the more advanced elements in AdapTableQL. AdapTableQL is the query language which Adaptable provides, and it allows you to create reports and queries and alerts and calculated columns. And generally speaking, most expressions are fairly comprehensible. If you look at a typical expression, you can kind of understand most of what it does. However, we do allow some advanced elements in expression, such as query functions, var functions, logic. And so I want to look at the first of those today, the query function, because it's a very powerful tool which can really make considerable impact on your desktop. So how does it work? So let's start just by creating a normal query. So let's go into our query editor, and we will create a query where we will say we're interested in the rows where GitHub stars are greater than 35,000, or where, and then let's add another clause, GitHub watchers is greater than 700. Now you see here we have the option to save this as a new named query. We won't do that now, but we will in a minute. And now when we run our query, we can see that out of 25 total rows, we have 12. So this query returns me 12 rows. And what I can now do is I can save it. So I'm now saying this piece of information is quite useful, and I might want to use that in multiple places in Adaptable. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to save this query. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it Popular Frameworks. And now what that means is that if I clear this query, we will see that Popular Frameworks has been added to our query, and then anytime I want, I can run it together with all the other queries that I give Adaptable. So where's the power? Well, what's nice is because we have now given this a name, we can also use it elsewhere. For instance, we can, let's say we can create a format column. So for instance, we can say we want all rows, and we want the condition to be, and now when we go into our query editor, as well as seeing the columns, we can see we've got a second tab for named queries, and that's the named query we just created. And that's all we do. We're not going to add another clause for the moment, and you can see that essentially the query function takes one parameter, which is the name of any named query that's been created. So that's now our new query, which is referencing Popular Frameworks. And obviously that means if we change Popular Frameworks, then everything that queries it will also update in real time. And now let's give it a style. So for instance, we'll say those rows will have a brown and white color, and then let's make them metallic. Okay, so there we are, the rows that match our query. Now obviously we know that if we now run this query, then all rows will look like that. Essentially we've used it to do a format, and we can now use this of course in multiple places. So for instance, we could, let's say, create a report, and we can say we want all columns, and again let's use our query, and now we can say this is the query we want to run. We will call it our Popular Report, and now I can select my popular report. Let's say I want to send it to CSV, and then there we are, that will go to CSV, and when I run my popular report, there we are, the same 12 rows that we saw before. Now of course, because it's a query, because it's a single function, you can add other parameters to the expression that calls that named query. So let's create one more example. This time we'll create an alert, and we'll create a very simple alert, the most simple type of alert, which is data change. And we will say the trigger can be all columns, so whenever any column changes, we'll run the alert. And the rule is again going to be a Boolean query, and again we're going to use our named query, but this time we will add a second element, argument, to the expression, and we're going to say we're only though interested where the language is equal to JavaScript. So that's our alert. Essentially tell me if there's been any changes to any rows which have this query, i.e. GitHub stars and GitHub watchers are both above the or one of them is above the numbers we said, and where the language is JavaScript. And now let's create a warning for our alert. And now let's show a notification. There's obviously a whole lot more, but we don't want to look at alerts today. And now we've created our alert. And now we can see that work now in real time. So for instance, if I go into this row here, so actually let's make this a checkbox. So for instance, if I change this, there we are, my alert fires because I've changed a row where language is JavaScript. But if I change this one, nothing happens because it was TypeScript. Again, nothing will happen in this fourth one because it's TypeScript, but this one here will trigger the alert. And likewise, if I do any of these three, nothing will happen because obviously the first part of the alert expression, which is our named query, hasn't run. So there we are. We've created this named query called Popular Frameworks, which we can see here, and we've referenced it elsewhere in Adaptable in a format column, in a report, and in an alert. So that, and each time we do so by using this query function. So that's all there is to it. If you'd like to know more about Adaptable or about AdapTableQL, or state-of-the-art query language, which really is the most powerful on the street, please get in touch. We'd be delighted to give you a one-to-one demo, or indeed provide you with a free, no obligation trial license. Thank you for watching.